November wrap up, and it's super cold in here, so I got my blanket and everything. And hopefully the cat doesn't come and try to ruin this video, because he's been, I see you, he's been very needy lately. In the month of November, I read a lot of books, which I was not expecting. I've actually completed my Goodreads goal now, which is super exciting. I like just completed it, I think, with the last book I read, or maybe the second to last book, I don't know. The majority of them were ebooks or audiobooks through Overdrive, but I did read a few physical books. I ended up reading or listening to 12 books, and I DNF'd one. I'll mention the DNF real quick. It was called Love Lex. It's in like a new adult bind up that I had gotten super cheap, so I've been trying to make my way through it, and it was so bad. I didn't get very far. I'm sure it works for some people, but its style and tone and the voice of the heroine was just driving me crazy. So finally I was just like, you don't have to read this. And then I was like, you're right, self. And so I stopped reading it. So first I read Idol by Kristen Callahan, which is part of a series called VIP that she has. I gave this 4 stars. I would consider it like a contemporary romance, maybe new adult-ish. It's about like a rock star who ends up going to like an island, I think it's an island, a small area to kind of escape some things because his life is a little rough. And he meets this girl named Libby, his name is Killian, and she kind of like doesn't take his crap and everything, and they fall in love and all that. I liked it. It was a cute story. I like Kristen Callahan's writing. I like the side characters a ton, and I'm actually not a huge fan of like rocker stories personally, but this one worked pretty well for me, and I liked Libby as a character. She reminded me a lot of myself. Like, she's an introvert, but that doesn't mean that she like hates people necessarily. I read The Darkest Promise by Gina Showalter, which I believe is the most recent Lords of the Underworld book, and I gave this 4 stars. It's Cameo's book, which she is the only female Lord of the Underworld. I'm not going to explain the series. I think I did a review on it, or like an overview kind of fairly recently, explaining a little bit about it. So I was kind of excited about this one, and there's some like groundwork laid in the last few books, and I did enjoy this. I thought it was better than the last few books, which was good. I mean, it's a paranormal romance, so there's a lot of like alpha men and women being a little foolish. Cameo wasn't as bad as some of the other girls, but she was pretty good. And I think I've come to terms with this series that I'm going to keep reading it, but I'm going to stop trying to figure out what's going on with like the overall plot and just focus on the romances, because trying to keep everybody straight and what their relationships are with each other is just confusing me. And then I listened to At Home by Bill Bryson, and I gave this 4 stars. It was an audiobook. It was read by him. I really liked it as an audiobook. Like, in general, I felt like his voice was really good. And it was interesting. It's sort of like a history of the world by like traveling through a house and talking about all these different things. And I listened to it a lot while I was at work. I recently changed jobs, so I can't do that anymore, but at my old job I could listen to stuff while I was working. It was interesting, I guess. I don't know. It's good. It's a good audiobook. Then I read On the Fence by Casey West, which I gave 4 stars. You're going to notice a trend. There's a lot of 4-star reads in this month. This is like a young adult contemporary, and I've heard a lot about Casey West, and people seem to like her a lot, and I've always wanted to like try one of her books, so I was able to get this one through Overdrive, so I read it. I did enjoy it. It was cute. It was exactly what you would expect from a young adult contemporary. And I would totally read another Casey West book. It's about a girl who her mother passed away when she was younger, so she just has her brothers and her dad, and she's kind of like a tomboy, and then her neighbor, who's a guy who's like best friends with her brothers, and she ends up like, I mean, there is a romance in the story, but I think the story is more about, and the romance is cute. It is. It's very cute. I think the story is more about her internal growth. Like, she ends up having to get a job, and that forces her to interact with people and girls and women she wouldn't normally interact with, and she's maybe a little judgy of, and it kind of helps her develop, and like she takes on some more like girly things, but it doesn't cause her to lose herself, that kind of stuff, which I liked. It reminded me a lot of a Miranda Keneally book, but like better. I know a lot of people like Miranda Keneally. It just doesn't work for me. Her heroines tend to be a little annoying. And this heroine was annoying, but she like developed, so it felt like it was done on purpose to like show her getting better and being more open. Then I read Mortal Heart by Robin Lefevers, which was on my fall TBR. And this is the third book in the, I thought, His Fair Assassins trilogy, but I was recently looking on Goodreads and there's more books, I believe following all of the same characters. But anyway, so this is about, what is her name? Aneth, I think? I don't know, that's how I said it in my head. Because the trilogy follows 3 different women who are young ladies who work for like this covenant for death. It's like sort of historical fiction, sort of fantasy. Like he's kind of like an old saint, like before like Christianity came in, but Christianity has come in, so they like work for him and stuff. I don't know. It makes sense when you're reading it. I'm just not good at describing it. So she's been waiting because she wants to do her job to serve death. And so, but the like convent, did I say covenant earlier? I meant convent. The convent isn't really like doing what she wants them to do when it comes to her having chances, so she kind of runs away and goes out on her own to do what she wants. And it picks up on, like, this is definitely a series you need to read in order because there's like political machinations going on. So there's more of that, and she gets wrapped up in that with her friends and everything. And there is a romance. I gave this 4 stars. Can't remember if I said that or not. It was definitely a good book. It kept me engaged. I love the relationship between these 3 ladies, and her story was really interesting. I liked the romance. Like, I felt it. I felt the romance, but it was also a little predictable, which if you've read it, I think you'll know what I mean by that. So then there was another audiobook, which was A Short History of Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson, which I gave 4 stars. This one is super long and it's kind of, I don't know what I thought this was going to be, because obviously it's weird. I thought it was literally going to be like little kind of like bits about like a bunch of different things, but it's not. It really is about like a short history of nearly everything, in that like talking about like theories and beliefs about how the world came to be, like scientific beliefs. So like things like the Big Bang, things about how atoms work and all of that. And definitely interesting. Like, I think he does a really good job of making material that could be very dry, like fairly interesting and compelling to listen to. Especially then I read The Seduction of Elliot McBride, is that what it's called? Yes. Which I think is the 5th book in the Mackenzies and McBride series by Jennifer Ashley. Gave it 4 stars. No surprise there. Elliot McBride, obviously, and Juliana, that's how I would say it. I don't know where Juliana came from. And they were like childhood friends, and they actually both kind of liked each other, but like didn't know that the other liked them, because Lord knows I don't like unrequited love. And I'm hesitant to even call that this, because neither of them were like super piney, but this worked better, I guess. So she's going to get married, and then her husband kind of like leaves, or fiance leaves her, and he happens to be there, and he wanted to marry her anyway, so she's like, well, what if you marry me? And he's like, oh, sure. But he has some like PTSD from some situations that happened to him and everything. I don't know. It's a historical romance. It's cute. It's a Jennifer Ashley book. There's some Mackenzies in here, so you get some nice, a little bit of Ian and Beth, a little bit. So then I read Manage by Kristen Callahan, which is the 2nd book and the only other book out so far in the VIP series. Gave it 4 stars. I liked it. I think I might like this one a teensy bit better than the first one. I just find the characters interesting, and if you had given me the synopsi, whatever, for both of them, I would have thought the first one would have been a little more up my alley than this one. But this one worked really well. It has a little bit of that like bickering thing, which I really enjoy. And the hero is kind of like cool and like cold, I guess is what I mean. Like very flat. Especially in the first book, he comes across as very like harsh and cold. And sometimes when you have stories that then are about that character, the author decides to still have that like coldness, which is fine. It's a choice. And here Kristen Callahan like really got behind that, and like you as the reader, because it's like a dual POV book, get to really get into his head. So I really appreciated that. Like you could see the like sweetness and like the emotion underneath that cold mask. So then I read Unveiled by Courtney Milan, which is the first book in her Turner series, and I gave this 4 stars. Do I even remember? Yes, I do sort of remember. That one kind of just like happened. I read it really fast, which usually when I read books super fast, I feel like I forget what happens in them. It was enjoyable. It was a historical romance. It was Courtney Milan. I liked it. I plan on continuing to read the series. I also just don't want this video to be like 30 minutes long. So then I continued my reread of the Hathaway series, and I read Seduce Me at Sunrise by Lisa Kleypas, which is the second book in the series. Gave it 5 stars, although I will say that this was always my favorite in the series, and I'm not sure it is anymore. I think, listen, the first 4 books in the series are like 4 of my favorite books in like life. So it's really hard to pick, but I feel like I'm looking ahead, and I think the 4th one is going to become my favorite, although Mine Till Midnight is just, oh, they're all so good. They really are. But this just took a like slight step down for me. It had been a few years at least since I had read this. I am going to do a series review of these once I finish my reread, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. There's a lot of codependency, I guess, in this book, which doesn't always bother me, but sometimes it does. And I wouldn't say it like super bothered me, but I noticed some more of like the flaws or potential issues with their relationship that I didn't see when I was younger. But I still really enjoy it. I still like the series. I love this family, all of that stuff. And then I listened to an audiobook called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office by Lois Frankel, I think it's her name. I gave it 3 stars. I was having trouble at my old job, and I just started a new job, and I think this applies very much so to my new job. And I found it interesting. It's basically like, I think it's called like 101 Mistakes Women Make or something like that. And so she says the mistake and then gives you a tip on how to like adjust it. And I think a lot of it was interesting, and I realized I do a lot of those things, or I see them in other people, and I'm more aware of it now. But I thought some of them were just kind of like ridiculous. Like some of the things are like, it basically like, just be like a guy. And I get that the idea is that like behaviors that men have in an office makes them more successful, but in society just be more accepting. It's kind of like the introvert versus extrovert thing. Like I shouldn't have to pretend to be an extrovert in order to succeed in life. The world should be accommodating of introverts. Like I'm not saying like fall all over themselves to like help me, but if I know how to leverage my personality type, which I do, then it shouldn't matter that I don't like chit chat with people, I guess, or I don't need to be like the center of a room all the time. Like, I don't know. So, and so I got 3 stars, but it was, I mean, it was a decent read, and I'm glad I listened to it. The last book I read was another book from my fall TBR, which is The Remedy. It's just over there, but I have the dust jacket, by Suzanne Young, and I gave it 4 stars. This is like a prequel. There's a prequel duology to the program duology, and this is the first one in that prequel duology. I did really enjoy it. Gave it 4 stars. I think I said that. It was definitely kind of a mind trip to read because the main character, she's a closer, so when people lose someone in their life, like a young woman between the ages of 16 and 20, she goes in as her job and pretends to be that person to help them get closure on like their death and everything. So as she, and it's told in first person, so as she's doing this, like she'll start saying like my mom, my dad, and those aren't her parents, but like because she like becomes like, it's like it's like hyper over the top uber method acting and everything. So it was really interesting, and it's weird because like obviously I know what happens after this because I've read the program and the treatment, and so that was kind of weird. but I mean, I think you're supposed to. You're supposed to like have those ideas in your head. I did really enjoy it. It definitely tripped me out, not just because of the writing, but again, just like the program, it kind of like hit this part in my brain that kind of like feels a little uncomfortable by like the thoughts that people have and like the thoughts that will get put in my head in like a good way. And I think Suzanne Young does a really good job of addressing difficult topics. I mean, the program Duology is all about suicide. And suicide is mentioned in here as well, just as like a trigger warning. It's not as prominent as it is in the program, but it's definitely there. She just talks about these like really difficult, complex situations in a really honest and beautiful way, especially for young adults. So those are the books that I read in the month of November. Again, I think this wasn't very coherent because my wrap-ups suck. If you have any comments, questions, anything like that about any of these books that are non-spoilery, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. And I will try to answer them, especially since I wasn't very specific about a lot of stuff. Spoilery. I will see you next time. Bye.